Thank you everyone for joining, and let's get started. So in this session, I'm going to talk about a little bit of introduction to SaaS. What is SaaS? What SaaS means to us as user assistance team. Some of the guiding principles that we need to follow when we are writing for SaaS. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about our journey at PTC when we are transforming into the SaaS world. We are doing the writing for the SaaS products, some of the insights into that, and the roles and responsibilities that come up in the SaaS world for writers, and some of the upskilling opportunities that we need to look forward to, right? So what is SaaS? I'm sure many of us already know what SaaS is or have a brief idea, but I still want to take a brief moment to talk a little bit about it. So this is a standard definition that is available all over the internet. It's a software distribution model in which a cloud provider hosts the application and makes it available to the end user over the internet. So what that means is the applications are no longer getting installed on the client machines. They're available out there on the internet, and they're being accessed using the web browsers. So what does that mean in turn is the maintenance of the software or the maintenance of the hardware, that responsibility is not there with the end user anymore. That's the responsibility of the cloud providers. So the users are sort of relieved of maintenance of the complex software and hardware requirements. Now, why are people or why are companies really moving the SaaS or going to the SaaS world? Some of the features or some of the benefits of the SaaS world are listed here. One, availability and mobility. Because it's on the internet, it's available 24/7. It is not installed on any particular computer or any particular device. It can be accessed from anywhere. We have the flexibility and the mobility to access from anywhere. Lower cost of ownership because the software and hardware, again, it is being shared across different organizations. The cost is shared. It's very secure and scalable because most of these cloud providers, they exert very stringent measures for security. So it makes it very secure. As well, it's very easy to scale up or scale down the application. Whenever the requirement is more, you can scale up. If you don't need the more resources, you can scale down pretty easily. Then all of that translates into a better user experience because we have all of these features that makes it for better user experience, ease of use of the application. We can also make flexible collaborations, right? Because we have role-based accesses for the products, so it is easy to collaborate with different types of users. And all of this, again, gets us into the accelerated innovation. Why? Because the time to market in the SaaS world is pretty less. You can deploy things faster, and this helps to accelerate the innovation. So these are some of the reasons that companies today are going the SaaS way. They want to move to the SaaS world. And because of all of this, we as writers need to align ourselves with the overall SaaS strategies of the companies. So what does that really mean to us as user assistants? Right? First and foremost, we need to understand what really is changing in the product, what are the changes that we need to look forward to in terms of user experience, how it may impact us, and what are the important areas of focus for us when we are writing for the SaaS products. We need to formulate questions and areas of further investigation because we need to talk to our product managers, to end users, to the support engineers, to all sorts of audience to make sure that we understand their requirements and they translate into our documentation. We need to also identify opportunities for innovation because, again, the SaaS products are designed to be simple to use. So we need to make sure that even the documentation that we write aligns with that particular aspect. And all of this we need to use as food for thought to prepare for defining our own strategy as user assistance team. Now, here I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the guiding principles that when we are working at PTC for the SaaS products, what are some of the things that we took into consideration? First and foremost is the user experience. We looked at what is really changing in the user experience and how that is going to change the way we write our documentation. We looked at some of the deployment use cases because now the deployments are going to be handled by our teams, the implementation partners. We need to make sure that we are catering to their needs into consideration, because there are going to be different roles that are going to be coming up. There are going to be platform administrators, there are going to be business administrators, so different types of administrative roles are also coming up. We need to make sure that we are writing for all of them. Frequent updates. In the SaaS world, again, we know that updates are pretty frequent. We need to make sure that the product we are delivering is always up to date, having the latest features, and that in turn means that our documentation also needs to have the up-to-date information all the time. So we need to consider how we are going to keep the documentation updated, because we're going to have, or we are having our existing on-premises product, and we are also supporting the emerging SaaS products. So we need to make sure that all of the documentation that we have is all the time up to date. Role-based access. Again, because there are going to be different roles that are coming up in the SaaS world, we need to make sure that the documentation that we cater or that we give out to the customers also has the role-based access. Even though we might have a lot of information, we need to make sure that we are providing the correct type of information to the users based on their journey and their persona. That needs to be considered when we are designing our documentation. And last but not the least is the support. We've been always working closely with the support teams. We know that we take feedback from them, but now in the SaaS world, it becomes more and more critical to make sure that whatever feedback the support teams are getting, we are working on that and making sure that the documentation is tuned or fine-tuned to make sure that we are considering all the aspects that are coming back from the end users. Now here I'm going to talk a little bit about the content experience, overall content experience in the SaaS world. We have defined it with 3 pillars, right? So the content itself, the delivery of the content, and the findability of the content. So when I talk about the content, again, based on the persona and the customer journey, we need to make sure that the correct information is delivered at all the times. Onboarding of the users need to be very smooth. We need to make sure that we are creating documents for onboarding the users, because that's the first interaction of the users with our product. So we need to make sure that it goes out very smooth. We need to consider that. We need to, of course, we are going to write about feature and functionality. We are doing that as writers. We always write about features and functionalities. That is something that we need to continue to do. And support and operations, because the deployment model is changing. Newer roles are coming up. The support and operations team, we need to make sure, or we are making sure that we are documenting for their needs as well. Then the delivery of the overall content. So we need to, again, make sure the frequency of updates. We have agile world, so all the time updates are happening to the product. So we have to consider how we are going to deliver those frequent updates in terms of our documentation as well. And for that, we are making use of automation tools in order to build our help centers, in order to do our submissions to our localization teams. So we are making use of automation tools for that. Then the third pillar for content experience is the findability of the content. So the SaaS world, we cannot expect having our documentation lying around in terms of PDFs or Google Drive files and so on. So it's imperative that we have our content available 24/7, online content, which is accessible to the end users easily. We need to also take into consideration the search feature, because again, as I said earlier, we have a lot of content, a lot of information goes into the SaaS documentation, not just about the features and functionalities, but also a lot of supportive and auxiliary documents that we need to write. But we need to make sure that even though there is a lot of information, it is very easy for the end users to search for the right information that they need. We also are considering the SEO best practices, because many a times we know that even though the SaaS products are licensed products, we need to pay a certain amount to be able to use the products. But most of the times, the documentation or the help that is available for those products is not really lying behind a firewall. It's generally available to anybody over the internet. Anybody can type the URL and find the information for a particular product's documentation. So that is why it makes it very critical for us to make sure that our SEO best practices are in place and we are taking care of whenever somebody is searching for a particular content that is relevant to the domain that we are catering to, we need to make sure that our content appears in one of the top searches. So the SEO best practices is also another important aspect that needs to be taken into consideration. So how do we really talk about, or when we talk about good experience with SaaS, these are some of the points or some of the features, some of the important things that are taken care while designing the products. So now let's look at them one by one. Frictionless sign-up. It is expected that a SaaS product should have a very frictionless sign-up. It should encourage the end users to sign up for the product, at least for the trial version. So how does that translate, or how do we as user assistance team come into picture? Good copy. We need to make sure that we write good micro copy so that it is encouraging to the end users to try our products, to get signed up for the products. Second is laser focus on the target audience. Again, because in the SaaS world, there are role-based access. We have different types of users and user personas coming into picture. The focus needs to be on the target audience while designing the product. And that translates into role-based documentation. We need to make sure that whatever documentation we are providing, it is accessible to the user based on their role. We are able to cater to their requirements and their needs at a particular point in time. Simple onboarding. Again, it is important that the onboarding of a SaaS product needs to be simple, because by design, generally the SaaS products are complex, but the delivery of the product or the onboarding of the product needs to be very simple so that the users can easily connect to the product. Now, how does that translate, or what does that imply to us as user assistance teams? We are using push and pull strategies, where we are pushing the information during the onboarding, where to get them started with the product, how they can sign up, how they can do a few things to get them started. But at the same time, we also have certain information that as end users, they need to pull out. So we give detailed information is also available, but we do not bombard them with a lot of information. The users can, depending on their requirement, they can use the pull approach to get the information required. Then is the easy to use UI. The UI of the SaaS products need to be pretty easy to use. And how does that translate is by us, because we as user assistance teams are one of the first users of the product, right? We take into consideration at PTC, we are using Figma to do the mockups, or we have this microcopy champions team which give the feedback to the designing team in order to make sure that the product that we design has one of the best and easy to use UI. So the UA feedback in all this process is very, very important. Then the product needs to be personalizable. The end users need to be able to relate to the product. And for that, what we as user assistance team can do is we can make sure that our documents, that whatever we write, be it the microcopy, be it the user guides, be it the admin guides, whatever type of content that we write, it speaks the brand voice and the brand tone. It resonates with that, and it reflects into entire documentation that we do. Frequent updates is another important feature of a SaaS product. And as user assistance team, we need to make sure that the documentation is always up to date. Beautiful design of the product translates into easily available content. The content needs to be available easily to the end users. And readily available support. Again, the support for SaaS products is a huge business. We need to make sure that whenever there are support cases that are being logged, we need to ensure that we collaborate with the support teams. We get the feedback from them on what type of questions are coming more, what is it that the customers are asking for, and then we need to go back and fine-tune our own documentation and make sure that we are catering to the needs, or we are in line with what the customers are looking for. Here, let's spend a little bit time I'm going to talk about a little bit of our journey at PTC, what we did while we are migrating to the SaaS products. We have our PLM products which have been there for n number of years. We've been documenting for them. We have all the processes in place. We have tools in place. Everything is there. But when it comes to the SaaS world, we are needing to do few things differently. And what are those things? Some of them I have listed here. First and foremost, we have conducted industry research. We've conducted industry research for all the SaaS products, not just in our own domain, but in different domains also, so that to find out what are the common points that most of the SaaS companies are going by in their documentation. So that we want to understand what is it that people are doing out there, so as we also be consistent with the standards that are in the industry. We started participating in the innovation work streams. We have innovation work streams where we discuss about whatever the latest technologies are there. We build our own prototypes, and then in long run, they translate into our products. So as writers, as user assistance team members, we started getting into those innovation work streams so that to understand what exactly the overall company vision is towards the SaaS world and how we are aligned with that. Then we created a catalog of the requirements and deliverables. So again, as I said earlier also, we have different types of user roles coming into picture. We created a comprehensive list of all user roles that are coming up and all types of deliverables that we may need to cater to at different points. Earlier, when we were working in the on-prem model, our products, when the products were being updated, or we were giving major releases every 6 months to 1 year. Now with SaaS world, the time is coming down to 3 months to 6 months. And for every release, we are giving out something called as a validation build, which is before the actual release, we are giving it to the admins. We need to make sure that whenever we are giving that, we have certain documentation that goes along with those validation releases that are going to be helpful for those admins. Those are in place. So all sorts of different documentation, different user roles, we need to list it. We listed down, and we came up with a list of all the deliverables. Of course, as we are going forward, we are growing that list, and it is continuously evolving. We also looked at migration approach, because we have the legacy products are on-premises products. There are customers who are using them, and now we want to move them into the SaaS world. We want to take them to the SaaS world. So this is a transformation. This is a journey for them from on-premises to the SaaS world. And here in this journey, there are a lot of things that happen. The first and foremost is the requirement or the analysis, the feasibility study, whether the customer's environment is really feasible to be moved to SaaS. If that is there, if it is not there, then what are the steps that they need to do? If it is already feasible to move to SaaS world, what are the next steps that they need to do? So these are the transformation or the migration steps. And for each of these steps, we are creating documentation that support the end users at each of these steps. Then we are also focusing on the information architecture. Of course, as writers, as user assistance teams, all of us are doing that. But it becomes more relevant in the SaaS world because we need to make sure that we are able to pick and choose content and come up with documentation that caters to different needs. So this is more of where we are doing the reusability of the content, where the content is there, but we need to pick up few things, tweak something, and then give out the documentation as per the requirements. Because there are different user roles that are going to require that type of information. We are creating comprehensive knowledge base. Now, while we are doing this, we are not working in silos. We are not going to write everything by ourselves. A lot of collaboration is is happening here. We are working with our SRE teams, the service reliability team, the tech support teams, and so on, to make sure that we create a knowledge base that is going to help the end user to find whatever information that they need. We are using a lot of telemetry data that is coming from the product directly. For example, we are looking at of course, with the Performance Advisor and some other products, we are collecting the information about how the users are using our product. What are the workflows that are being used mostly? Or what are the use cases, or what are the commands that are being used widely? So we collect that information, and then we go back and we see that whether our documentation that needs to be focused on these areas, are we really catering to the needs that they have? If not, then we are improving on that. So the telemetry data that is coming from the product is being used by the UA team to make sure that the documentation is always up to date. And then we have user feedbacks coming in whenever there are our support teams conduct some surveys in terms of for the documentation. We get those inputs from them, and then again we go back and see that if there are any areas that we need to improve into. Some of the roles and responsibilities that come up in the SaaS world for writers. One, research and analysis. Again, as writers, we've always been doing that, but it becomes more and more relevant in the SaaS world because we are not just going to write about the features and functionalities of the product. We are going to write a lot about the underlying technology. We are not just going to create the documentation that is related to the end user. We are also going to talk, or we are also going to make sure that we are delivering the information for support engineers. We are also going to make sure that the entire training of the end users is happening through the documentation. So in order to be able to do that, we need to do a lot of research and understand our products and the technology. Writing, again, we have been writing. We've always been writing. But again, in terms of SaaS writing, we are going to make sure that we write to the end user's requirement. So, yeah. Then we have the micro copywriting, again, for smooth onboarding and for smooth transformation of the user from the initial trial phase into getting them to actually signing up for the products. It's important that we write a good micro copy, and that is one of the roles that we need, or responsibility that we need to focus on. Creating videos and storyboarding, because again, SaaS products, a lot of videos are getting created. A lot of people ask for videos because they don't want to go through the lengthy content. So we need to create 1 or 2 minutes videos where we are talking about onboarding or solving a particular use case. So for that, we need to make sure that we are creating good videos and we are doing the storyboarding right so that the videos come out to be the best and they solve the customer's problems. Monitoring of searches, SEO, again, because as I mentioned, we have the products are being, even though the products are licensed, the documentation is available out there. We need to make sure that whenever somebody is looking at our documentation or searching for some information, our documentation comes into one of the top searches. This is important because we are not just talking to the end users. Sometimes even before the product, even before the company decides to go for a particular product, they're going to probably look into the documentation. So the decision makers and the top level people are also going to look into the documentation to decide whether that documentation or to decide whether that product is really going to solve their use case, right? And usability testing. Because again, we are the first users of the product, so we need to do the usability testing. We need to give the correct kind of feedback to our developers. Because when the prototype is frozen, and that's when the writing also starts or comes into picture. So if we feel that there is something that is not very user-friendly or something that is not very easy to do, we can go back and give that feedback to the development team so that they can work upon it to make sure that the product is more and more user-friendly. Some of the upskilling opportunities that come up. So we need to get comprehensive knowledge of the product features, in-depth understanding of the underlying technology, because again, we are talking about complex products. We need to understand it ourselves so that we'll be able to educate our end users. The working knowledge of version control systems and automation tools, because we are delivering products or we are delivering the content pretty frequently. We need to make sure that all of that happens seamlessly and we don't have much time to spend on building. So we need to invest in automation as well as version control systems. Collaboration with stakeholders, again, this is something that we have been doing, but here it becomes even more critical because we are not going to create entire of documentation all by ourselves. We have to talk to our different types of end users, different types of stakeholders to make sure that we get information from them and that gets translated into our product documentation. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. In a summary, writing for SaaS products, it requires a complete mindset shift We need to think we are not writing only for the products or only for the end users. We need to think beyond that. It is important to align ourselves with the organization's SaaS strategy so that we write and we talk the brand language, and the entire experience is seamless for our end users. Innovation, collaboration, and continuous improvements are the key factors for successful SaaS writing. Because we've been always doing that, but when it comes to the SaaS world, it becomes even more relevant because we need to continuously go back to our end users, get their feedback, understand what is their requirement, and make those changes in our documentation. So that's it from my side. Thank you very much for joining. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Anuja, for a lovely session.